to the Daily Bite. I'm your host, Pastor Steve Andrews. The text today brings us to the division of the nation of Israel, of God's people, from one tribe into two. 1 Kings chapter 12. Rehoboam went to Shechem, for all Israel had come to Shechem to make him king. And as soon as Jeroboam the son of Nebat heard of it, for he was still in Egypt where he had fled from King Solomon, then Jeroboam returned from Egypt. And they sent and called him. And Jeroboam and all the assembly of Israel came and said to Rehoboam, Your father made our yoke heavy. Now therefore lighten the hard service of your father and his heavy yoke on us, and we will serve you. He said to them, Go away for 3 days, then come again to me. So the people went away. Then King Rehoboam took counsel with the old men who had stood before Solomon his father while he was yet alive, saying, How do you advise me to answer the people? And they said to him, If you will be a servant to this people today, and serve them, and speak good words to them when you answer them, then they will be your servants forever. But he abandoned the counsel that the old men gave him, and took counsel with the young men who had grown up with him and stood before him. And he said to them, What do you advise that we answer this people who have said to me, Lighten the yoke that your father put on us? The young men who had grown up with him said to him, Thus shall you speak to this people who said to you, Your father made our yoke heavy, but you lighten it for us. Thus shall you say to them, My little finger is thicker than my father's thighs. And now whereas my father laid on you a heavy yoke, I will add to your yoke. My father disciplined you with whips, but I will discipline you with scorpions. So Jeroboam and all the people came to Rehoboam the 3rd day. As the king said, Come to me again the 3rd day. And the king answered the people harshly, and forsaking the counsel that the old men had given him, he spoke to them according to the counsel of the young men, saying, My father made your yoke heavy, but I will add to your yoke. My father disciplined you with whips, but I will discipline you with scorpions. So the king did not listen to the people, for it was a turn of affairs brought about by Yahweh, that he might fulfill his word, which Yahweh spoke by Ahijah the Shilonite to Jeroboam the son of Nebat. And when all Israel saw that the king did not listen to them, the people answered the king, What portion do we have in David? We have no inheritance in the son of Jesse. To your tents, O Israel! Look now to your own house, David. So Israel went to their tents. But Rehoboam reigned over the people of Israel who lived in the cities of Judah. Then King Rehoboam sent Adoram, who was taskmaster over the forced labor, and all of Israel stoned him to death with stones. And King Rehoboam hurried to mount his chariot to flee to Jerusalem. So Israel has been in rebellion against the house of David to this day. And when all Israel heard that Jeroboam had returned, they sent and called him to the assembly and made him king over all Israel. There was none that followed the house of David, but the tribe of Judah only. When Rehoboam came to Jerusalem, he assembled all the house of Judah and the tribe of Benjamin, 180,000 chosen warriors, to fight against the house of Israel, to restore the kingdom to Rehoboam the son of Solomon. But the word of God came to Shemaiah, the man of God, Say to Rehoboam the son of Solomon, king of Judah, and to all the house of Judah and Benjamin, and to the rest of the people, Thus says Yahweh, You shall not go up or fight against your relatives, the people of Israel. Every man return to his home, for this thing is from me. So they listened to the word of Yahweh and went home again according to the word of Yahweh. Then Jeroboam built Shechem in the hill country of Ephraim and lived there, and he went out from there and built Penuel. And Jeroboam said in his heart, Now the kingdom will turn back to the house of David. If this people go up to offer sacrifices in the temple of Yahweh at Jerusalem, then the heart of this people will turn again to their Lord, to Rehoboam, king of Judah, and they will kill me and return to Rehoboam, king of Judah. So the king took counsel and made 2 calves of gold. And he said to the people, You have gone up to Jerusalem long enough. Behold your gods, O Israel, who brought you up out of the land of Egypt. And he set one in Bethel, and the other he put in Dan. Then this thing became a sin, for the people went as far as Dan to be before one. He also made temples on high places and appointed priests from among all the peoples, who were not of the Levites. And Jeroboam appointed a feast on the 15th day of the eighth month, like the feast that was in Judah, and he offered sacrifices on the altar. So he did in Bethel, sacrificing to the calves that he had made. And he placed in Bethel the priests of the high places that he had made. He went up to the altar that he had made in Bethel on the 15th day in the 8th month, in the month that he had devised from his own heart. And he instituted a feast for the people of Israel, and went up to the altar to make offerings. This is the word of the Lord. Our text today shows us really great sorrow. We saw yesterday King Solomon's own rebellion against Yahweh, chasing after the gods of his many brides. Here today, we see his own son's foolishness and the replacement king's foolishness and unfaithfulness all over the place. The text starts with Rehoboam being made king, so anointed king over the land of Israel. Shechem is a 30-mile journey north of Jerusalem. It's probably the chief city in the land of Ephraim, just again to the north. Jeroboam, hearing that Solomon is dead, returns home from Egypt, and the people, apparently having a love for Jeroboam, they summon him, they bring him to them, and they go to Rehoboam together, and they demand that their load is lightened. Verse 4, your father made our yoke heavy. He was a taskmaster. He worked them hard, driving them to build all these different things, including his own palace and Yahweh's house, in addition to many other things. They're asking that if Rehoboam will lighten that service, if he will not work them as hard as Solomon did, that they will serve him. Rehoboam asked for 3 days to consider this, time for his considerations here, which is a smart move in some respects. Is this a trick from the people? On the people's part, it doesn't really seem like it. Jeroboam, it's hard to say. Jeroboam knows what the Lord has prophesied to him through Ahijah in the previous chapter, that he is to take over 10 of these tribes as his own country. So this could be a trick on Jeroboam's part to get the people to side with him. Rehoboam, the king, takes counsel with Solomon's advisors. Now, how wise is this? What happened to Solomon? What role did those advisors have to play in King Solomon's court? Or are they the ones that put him up to the alliances, to all those marriages? Or was that his own doing? Against their advice? We don't know. But Rehoboam asks for their advice first. They advise him what seems wise, right? Verse 7, if you will be a servant to this people today and serve them, they will be your servants forever. Rehoboam doesn't like that answer, turns to his young friends who have grown up with him, making his own counselors out of them, and asks for their advice. Their advice is a very visual thing. So this is one you can talk about with your kids. Have your child hold up their hand and point to their pinky. Like, just hold out their pinky, that little tiny finger. And dad, if you're sitting at the table with them, have them come over and put that pinky like right up against your thigh, your upper leg, and just see the size difference, right? A massive difference. And this is the picture that the young men are telling Rehoboam to give to the others. You thought dad made your job hard. I'm going to make it a lot harder. Rehoboam's going to I can't even say double. Rehoboam is just going to push this as far as he can. And the instruction here, not instruction, but the idea of discipline at the end. My father disciplined you with whips. I will discipline you with scorpions. Whips wound, right? If you hit somebody with a whip, you can think of that picture. Your children probably don't know that picture. Maybe the cracking of a whip against a horse. They might know that picture if they've seen somebody riding a horse. It hurts. It might cut. But a scorpion? That can be a discipline of death. And so Rehoboam is going to drive this people with sheer fear. He's setting himself up here to be an evil king with this advice if he takes it. You might talk to your kids about which advice is better. Whose advice should Rehoboam have taken and listened to? But Rehoboam's going to side with the young men, and he's going to be that evil king 1 Samuel 8 had warned about, that God had warned his people against. But he does it anyway. He goes with the wicked advice of the young men. And we learn in verse 15 that this whole event has been brought about by Yahweh. Yahweh has done this. We're going to see that again in verse 24. So the kingdom divides. The people's response is in verse 16 to King Rehoboam. They say, "What portion do we have in David? We have no inheritance in the son of Jesse." That's actually not true. Their inheritance remains. They do have a portion in David. They are rebelling against the appointed leader that God has given to them. Just as they rebelled against God himself back in 1 Samuel 8, now they're rebelling against the one God has appointed for them. This has been true of any earthly government ever since, even in our own setup, right? The democratic republic in which we live. You don't like your ruler? Just vote him out. Vote for somebody else. We're never content with those that God has given authority over us. They have still their inheritance, but they are rejecting the king, which also means, in a way, they're rejecting what truly comes from that inheritance, which was the promised Messiah. They're turning their backs on that. And they never return either, but we'll see that later. So Rehoboam sent the taskmaster to do his job and put them to hard work, and they stone him to death. King Rehoboam at that realizes that Israel has turned against him, so he flees. He returns to his fortress in Jerusalem, where he is as safe as he can be. The author of the book notes to us that Israel has been in rebellion against the house of David to this day. And truly, that's one of those "to this day" comments in the Old Testament that actually still works today, even in our time. So Israel in rebellion against the house of David. Immediately, it's a reference to Israel versus Judah, and that's going to continue even after the destruction of both Israel and Judah. The people of Judah, who side here with Rehoboam, in the New Testament age, they're what we know as the Jews. And the people of Israel, having assimilated into much of the rest of the world, they are probably best represented by what we would call the Samaritans in the New Testament. Samaria having been the capital city of the land of Israel in the future. Isn't yet in this text. But again, that does continue to this day, as even the Jewish people stand in rebellion against the house of David, that it being a reference to Jesus himself as the son of David, who would sit on the throne of God forever. So the stretch to this day, maybe not, but certainly the New Testament era, it was still true. So all of Israel hears Jeroboam has returned. They anoint him king instead of Rehoboam. And only Judah, we are told there in verse 20, follows Rehoboam. However, in 21, we also learn Benjamin does too, or at least half the tribe of Benjamin, as we will see. So what we have mounting as Rehoboam gathers 180,000 warriors together, we have civil war coming. But God cuts it off. He speaks to Shemaiah. "Thus says Yahweh, you shall not go up or fight against your relatives, the people of Israel." A family feud here. "For this thing is from me." This is God ordained. The people listen. It's like the first faithfulness in the text. They listen and they go home. Then we see Jeroboam. He sets up a temporary capital, fortifies that city of Shechem, and makes it his dwelling place. But he's concerned, as this new king, that if the people of Israel, the northern kingdom, travel south into Judah to go to worship Yahweh at the temple in Jerusalem, that they won't come back, that they'll side with Rehoboam and they'll leave him. And this concern for his power corrupts him, assuming he wasn't already, right? Jeroboam takes counsel, so that means it's not even just his call here, but his advisors advise him of this, and he agrees. And he makes 2 golden calves. Easy conversation with your kids. Where have we seen the golden calf before? Behold your gods, O Israel, who brought you up out of the land of Egypt. This is what Aaron was doing with the people when they were wandering in the wilderness. Exodus chapter 32. Instead of giving Yahweh the credit for being the one who brought them out of Egypt, all of a sudden it's their own little golden calf that they've built that gets the credit for bringing them up out of Egypt. And Jeroboam goes right back to that. And he takes these golden calves, he puts one of them in Bethel, which was a southern city in his kingdom, and the other in Dan, which was a northern city in his kingdom. So people could go to either one to worship this new false gods that he has created. He builds high places. He appoints priests who are not from the Levitical tribe, so he's breaking with the practices of God there some more. He establishes his own religious holiday that has nothing to do with what God has established. The holidays of the people of God in Judah, the holy days, are in the 1st month and in the 7th month, but Jeroboam's holy day is going to be in the 8th month, this feast. So we see all of these things going on. Jeroboam is misleading his people away from Yahweh. That conversation we had at the end of yesterday's chapter, the idea that if Jeroboam would be faithful, if he would walk in the ways of God, God would make his house established and firm. But Jeroboam rebels against Yahweh immediately. There's not even a period of faithfulness here for him. He goes against God from the start. And we're going to learn that every king of Israel, the northern kingdom, every northern king is going to do the same thing. Each one of them is going to be described. We'll see the wording as we go through the book. But they're going to be described as following the sin of their father, which will refer back to Jeroboam and these golden calves, to the pagan worship that has led Israel astray.